This lesson is on converting units using a method called fancy ones. Now, this type of staircase is probably something you've seen before, maybe in grade 9, maybe in another science class, where basically you have a staircase, and let's say you start at the base unit, which would be this one here. And if I have to go from the base unit to, let's say, deci, I'm going one staircase down, so that's down, which is this one here. And every time I go down one step, I multiply by 10. So you've probably seen that kind of method before. Now, these ideas and this kind of staircase is still an idea you're going to have to use in order to do the fancy ones. But the purpose of the fancy ones is to be able to convert anything. So even a unit that is made up, we could somehow use fancy ones in order to make it work. So let's just start out by remembering how to make things equal. So let's say I've got 1,000 meters. How many kilometers is 1,000 meters? Well, I know that pretty intuitively. I know that 1,000 meters is 1 kilometer, right? So those are equivalent expressions. 1,000 meters and 1 kilometer. They mean the same thing. What about something like 10 centimeters, and I want it to be equivalent to something in millimeters? Now I can use my staircase if I don't remember right away. So my staircase shows me here that centimeters and millimeters are one step away, and that I'm going from centi to milli, so that's down, so I'd have to multiply by 10. So that means that my answer here is 100. Now I get a little bit more tricky here. Say something like I have, let's go with 5 decimeters, and I want to write this in hectometers. So I'm going from decimeters to hectometers. You'll find deci is here, and hecto is here. So that means we went up 1, 2, 3 stairs, and up means to divide. And I did it 3 times, so that means I'm dividing by 1,000. 5 divided by 1,000, that gives me 0.05 hectometers. So again, I've got some equivalent expressions. And obviously it doesn't have to be meter, it can be anything. We can do an example here where we're using, let's say, kiloliters. So if I've got 2 kiloliters, and I want to write that now using, let's say, centiliters. Something you don't hear very often, but does exist. So I'm going 2 kiloliters to centiliters. So how many steps am I going to take? I know I'm going down. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stairs downwards. That's by 10. So I'm multiplying by 10 5 times. So I end up with 200,000 centiliters. This might be something I would even write in scientific notation. So it's 2 times 10 to the 5. And the idea here is you want to get so comfortable with this that you don't have to refer to the staircase anymore. I don't necessarily go really well in my head from, say, kilo to centi, but I can go in my head easily from kilo to base, and then from base to centi. So if you're using base as a central point, that'll be really helpful for you. Alright, so let's say I want to do this as my first example. I want to convert from 10 meters to a certain number of millimeters, and I'm going to show you this using fancy ones. I know a lot of you will be able to do this fairly intuitively, but I want to show you how the fancy ones works. So the first thing we want to do is figure out how many millimeters are in 1 meter. So we think about that a little bit, and we know that 1 meter is equal to 1,000 millimeters. And what I want to do is I want to write this as a 1. Okay, so first of all, I'm taking note that I'm going from meters to millimeters, and that tells me that I'm trying to get rid of meters. So if you're trying to get rid of meters, so right now I have meters on the top, so my unit on the top is meters, and I want to end up with millimeters. Means that I need to divide by meters. So So that means I want my meters in my 1 to be on the bottom. So that means I want this to be on the bottom of my fancy 1. Think of 1 in quotes here, okay? So we're trying to make it into 1. Well, how do you make something into 1? If let's say I want to make this side here into 1. So since I want to move this to the bottom, this is the side that's going to end up being 1. So I need to divide both sides by 1 meter. So that means I've got 1 meter divided by 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters divided by 1 meter, because what I do to one side I have to do to the other, right? So this 1 meter divided by 1 meter leaves us just with 1. So that means I have a fancy 1. I have 1 equals 1,000 millimeters over 1 meter, right? So this fraction I have on the right side is equivalent to 1. So this, what I have here now, is my fancy 1. Okay, this is my fancy 1 for this particular question. So this is the factor that I'm going to multiply 10 meters by to find out how many millimeters that is. So 10 meters equals 10 meters times 1,000 millimeters over 1 meter. That's my fancy 1 factor. I always put them in square brackets just to make it nice and obvious that this is my multiplying factor to change the unit. And now you can see how these units are coming into play, how I wrote them up here. Alright, you're seeing those units come into play, right? So I've got a meter on the top and a meter on the bottom. So that means my meters divide out, and all I'm left with is millimeters on the top. So what I have here actually is 10 times 1,000 divided by 1. And 10 times 1,000 divided by 1 is 10,000 millimeters. Or if you want to write that in scientific notation, that's 1 times 10 to the 4 millimeters. I'm going to do another example here, and I'm actually going to do this one in 2 steps. It can be done in 1, but I find it easier sometimes if I have to go past the base that I'm going to go to the base unit first and then to the final answer. Again, it can be done in 1 step. And you can see here on the left that I've rewritten the symbols and the powers that go with it that show the size of that unit compared to the base unit. These numbers can be helpful ones, and these are the ones you're going to be responsible to know. So if I use mega or micro along with the 6 others that we've already had there on the staircase, then these are ones I will expect you to know. If I use another one, then I will tell you what it is, but you should know mega, kilo, hecta, deca, deci, centi, milli, and micro. Micro, that's this symbol down here. It's another Greek symbol that you'll have to know. The Greek symbol is called mu. So I'm going to break it into 2 steps. I'm going to go from kiloseconds to regular seconds, and then go to my microseconds. So to go from kiloseconds to seconds, I need to know how many seconds are in 1 kilosecond. So I know 1 kilosecond has 1,000 seconds in it, right? Because kilo here is 10 to the 3. So it has 3 zeros here, which means that my fancy 1 here, and again, I'm trying to eliminate the kilosecond. So since the kilosecond is in the numerator up here, it needs to be in the denominator in my 1. So that means my 1 is 1,000 seconds over 1 kilosecond. Okay, so now I can use this 1, right? Because if I multiply by a factor of 1, I'm not changing anything. So 0.032 kiloseconds times 1,000 seconds over 1 kilosecond. So my kiloseconds divide out because I've got 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator. So really what I have here is 0.032 times 1,000, which gives me 32, and the unit remaining here is seconds. So far I've gotten to my 32 seconds. Okay, so I know that that first step gets me to 32 seconds. So I'm going to take this next step. I have to go from seconds to microseconds. So how many microseconds are in a second in this case? Well, that means that there are, in 1 second, we know that there are 10 to the 6 microseconds. And again, I need seconds to be on the bottom because I'm wanting to end up with microseconds. So that means that my fancy one in this case is 10 to the 6 microseconds over 1 second. So 32 seconds times 10 to the 6 microseconds over 1 second. Seconds divide out, and I have 32 times 10 to the 6 microsecond, which actually is not scientific notation and isn't a regular number, so I need to fix that a little bit. And this is actually going to be 3.2 times 10 to the 7 microseconds.